You've been taught to chase goals, build networks, and lead with honesty. But these very habits make you predictable, easy to read, easy to use, easy to destroy. Today, I will show you the paradox of true power, how to erase your desires, detach from your circle, and rule through manipulation disguised as virtue. Because in a world of players and prey, only those who understand the contradiction dominate both. Power is not taken by strength. It is absorbed through silence, strategy, and the art of contradiction. The ambitious man becomes enslaved by his own goals. The social man is weakened by his need for belonging. But the one who learns to erase himself strategically, to move without emotion, to isolate without loneliness, to manipulate without being seen, becomes untouchable. You are not here to dream. You are here to dissect yourself, to remove the illusions that make you human but powerless. This is the power paradox, where the destruction of one's desires gives birth to influence, and isolation becomes the bridge to control. You were taught to set goals, to dream, to define your future so clearly that you could taste it. But what if that very clarity is your cage? Every time you announce what you want, you hand the world a map of your weaknesses. You give your rivals a route straight to your emotional core. And once they can predict what you crave, they can control what you do. A man driven by goals does not lead his life. He chases it. He becomes like a hound that never questions the path, only the scent. Look around you. Those obsessed with achievement often seem the most restless, don't they? They speak of freedom, yet every ambition ties another chain around their neck. The investor chasing profit, the influencer chasing attention, the lover chasing validation. Each thinks they are progressing, but all are merely reacting. When I once wrote that, a man who depends on fortune is lost, I meant this: when your happiness is tied to outcomes, you become the slave of circumstance. You move only when something outside you moves first. A true strategist operates in reverse. He does not set a goal and move toward it. He sets conditions that make power inevitable. Consider the prince who never declares his ambition to rule. He serves quietly, observes patiently. He learns the desires of those above him, the fears of those below. And while others strive for crowns, he manipulates the climate in which crowns are exchanged. So when the throne becomes vacant, everyone already looks to him, without him ever asking, "Now tell me, who truly achieved more? The one who burned himself for a vision, or the one who allowed ambition to burn for him?" Psychology calls this the illusion of control, the belief that by declaring intent, you gain strength. But in truth, you lose flexibility. Once you say, "This is what I will achieve," you lock yourself into a single narrative. And the moment the world shifts, your plan becomes your prison. The ruthless strategist never announces his path. He moves as water, shapeless, adaptive, unpredictable. To him, goals are not promises, they are tools, temporary masks worn to deceive observers, allies, and enemies alike. Think of Julius Caesar. He did not publicly announce his intention to rule Rome. He declared loyalty to the Republic. He acted as its defender, while dismantling it from within. Had he shouted his true goal, he would have been executed long before crossing the Rubicon. But by concealing his ambition, he became the Republic itself. The weak man shouts his desires. The powerful man shapes environments where his desires are fulfilled naturally. Ask yourself, how much of what you chase is actually your own will? How much is the echo of societal hypnosis, the illusion that to be worthy, you must always be striving? There is nothing admirable in endless motion. Ants move without rest, yet accomplish nothing beyond survival. Humans worship motion because stillness terrifies them. Stillness reveals truth, how little control they truly have. So they fill their calendars with noise, their minds with goals, and their hearts with restless craving. They call it productivity. I call it voluntary enslavement. To delete your goals is not to surrender ambition. It is to reclaim control over it. When you erase the finish line, you start seeing the field. When you stop chasing the result, you start controlling the process. A hunter who aims too quickly misses the prey. The strategist waits until the prey exposes itself. This is patience as a weapon. not hesitation but timing. You must learn to move without revealing direction, to work without announcing progress, to desire without attachment. Your enemies will mistake your silence for stagnation. Your peers will mock your lack of clear goals. But they will never see the invisible structure you build beneath. And when their carefully planned ambitions crumble at the first shift of fortune, you will remain unmoved, unpredictable, unbound. Remember this: the moment you define what you want, the world begins defining how you must act. But when you define nothing, you remain free to become anything. The paradox of power is that clarity limits you. To dominate, you must embrace uncertainty as your ally. You must dissolve your intentions until they become instinct, until your every move seems spontaneous, yet inevitable. Erase your goals. Sharpen your observation. Act with calm detachment. Because the one who wants nothing controls everything. You fear being alone. That fear is the leash that keeps most people tame. They cling to noise, to company, to endless conversation. Not for connection, but for distraction. Distraction from the unbearable realization that the world moves perfectly well without them. Yet the few who break that fear, who walk willingly into isolation, discover a truth that most never see. Solitude is not emptiness. It is power, concentrated, undiluted, and dangerously clear. When you withdraw from the crowd, you stop being an actor in their play. You become the author. History remembers kings, generals, and philosophers who understood this instinctively. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but found his strength not in the Senate's applause, but in his journal written in silence. Napoleon built his greatest strategies in exile, mapping empires from the edges of the world. And even I once wrote that a fortress is both a refuge and a weapon, if you know when to retreat behind its walls. But isolation is not for comfort, it is for clarity. It strips away illusion. It reveals who you are without the masks society demands you wear. Ask yourself, how much of your personality exists only to please others? How many of your opinions are simply echoes of the last voice that spoke near you? You cannot rule over others until you first rule over your own mind. And you cannot rule your mind while it is polluted by constant noise. Isolation, then, is not an escape, it is an elevation. It removes you from the storm so you can study its pattern. From solitude, people become data, emotions become instruments. The manipulator observes human nature most clearly from a distance. He studies how crowds obey trends, how men betray for praise, how women conceal truth behind empathy. He learns these patterns not by participating, but by watching. And when he returns to society, he speaks the language of the crowd fluently, but without ever believing in it. That is the secret advantage of strategic isolation. It turns you into an observer among participants. You can move through the social world unseen, detached, immune. Consider the court of Renaissance Florence. The ambitious courtiers who lived in constant gossip never rose above it. They were too close to the noise. But the silent advisor, the one who rarely appeared yet always listened, he shaped policy from the shadows. While others fought for attention, he claimed influence. Power is quiet, noise is weakness. And isolation is where quietness sharpens into precision. Psychologically, humans crave belonging because belonging signals safety, but safety dulls the mind. The man surrounded by constant comfort loses his instincts. He stops noticing motives, he stops sensing danger. He becomes prey wrapped in the illusion of friendship. When you isolate, you resurrect those instincts. You become alert again, sensitive to tone, to silence, to subtle manipulation. It is in isolation that your awareness becomes your armor. But make no mistake, strategic isolation is not loneliness. Loneliness is born from absence. Isolation is born from choice. The first is a wound, the second a weapon. You isolate not to cut off the world, but to command it more effectively. Like a general who climbs a hill before battle, you rise above the field to see every movement, every trap. From that height, you no longer react, you dictate. This is why true power figures often appear detached. Their distance is not arrogance, it's insulation. They cannot be manipulated because they are not emotionally available for it. They connect only when it serves purpose, Retreat only when it strengthens control. To the masses, they seem cold. But coldness is simply warmth under command. You must learn to build your own fortress, an invisible one. Not made of walls, but of mental discipline. To walk among others without needing them. To hear opinions without adopting them. To feel solitude without suffering from it. Once you reach that state, you no longer chase connection. It chases you. Because detachment breeds mystery, and mystery breeds power. People will try to pull you back. They will say you've changed. They will say you've become distant. What they really mean is you've become untouchable. Remember, no empire, no idea, no revolution was born from a crowd's comfort. They were all conceived in silence. Isolation is the womb of creation. Withdraw not to hide, but to see. Silence yourself, not to disappear, but to sharpen your perception. Because only the man who stands alone can truly see how the world moves. And only the one who sees the world clearly can begin to control it. Connection. It's the most seductive word in the modern world. Everyone wants to connect. But few ever question what connection really is. You think connection is built on honesty, vulnerability, and shared emotion. That's what the sentimental philosophers told you. But they forgot to mention the truth: connection is not love. It's leverage. Every bond is a transaction, whether you admit it or not. Every "I understand you" is a silent negotiation. And those who understand this rule use empathy not as affection, but as architecture. Because when you can connect deeply, without becoming attached, you can rule people without them realizing they've surrendered. Let's look at history. Julius Caesar didn't conquer Rome with swords alone. He conquered it through charm. He remembered names, favored the weak, praised his enemies publicly. His smile was a weapon, his words a leash. And when the Senate realized they had been seduced rather than persuaded, it was too late. Rome already belonged to him. Empathy is the most sophisticated form of manipulation because it hides its purpose behind warmth. The more you make others feel seen, the less they see you. Think about your own life. Who do you trust most? The one who listens or the one who speaks? The one who understands your pain or the one who tells you to ignore it? You trust the one who mirrors your soul. And that mirror, my friend, can either reflect truth or trap you in illusion. To manipulate connection, you must master emotional mirroring. Not to fake feelings, but to synchronize them. When you subtly match a person's tone, rhythm, and emotional energy, they feel understood, almost spiritually so. Their brain rewards them with dopamine. Their guard collapses, and that is when influence begins. But remember, manipulative connection requires control. Empathy without discipline becomes self-destruction. If you feel too much, you drown in other people's chaos. If you feel just enough, you steer it. That is why the powerful always appear calm. They never overreact. They let others pour out emotion while they quietly gather information. Every tear, every confession, every story is data, and data is control. The crowd calls this cold. They are right. Coldness is clarity, the kind that lets you see human nature without distortion. Let's take another example: Queen Elizabeth I. She ruled a kingdom surrounded by male adversaries who doubted her strength. But instead of fighting their prejudice, she used it. She charmed ambassadors, praised generals, and kept noblemen in orbit with calculated affection. Each believed they were her favorite. None realized they were being played against one another. Her empathy was selective, measured, deliberate, lethal. Do you see the pattern? To control others, you must give them what they crave most: recognition. But recognition is not validation. It is control disguised as care. You feed their ego just enough to make them dependent on your approval. They mistake that dependence for trust. Modern psychology calls this emotional attunement. Machiavelli called it the art of appearing virtuous. I call it the invisible throne, because once people feel you understand them, they willingly hand you their will. Now, ask yourself this. How often do you connect out of genuine curiosity? And how often do you connect to secure your position? How often do you give empathy without expecting obedience in return? If the answer is always, then you're not a strategist. You're a servant. And servants never rule. Empathy is a tool. It must be used, not worshipped. Because when used correctly, empathy lets you enter another's mind, rearrange their emotions and exit unseen, leaving them convinced the idea was their own. That is not cruelty. It is efficiency. You are not breaking them. You are guiding them. Influence, at its highest form, feels like freedom to the influenced. So study people. Listen more than you speak. Mirror without mimicking. Validate without attaching. Let them feel safe in your presence, but never let them see your calculations. When they laugh, smile. When they cry, nod. When they confess, listen, but never confess back. Because the moment you reveal too much, the illusion collapses. Every manipulator must remain half visible, real enough to be trusted, mysterious enough to be feared. And in this dance of emotion, the coldest mind always leads. Remember, hearts are not conquered through domination, but through synchronization. Make them feel known, and they will serve you voluntarily. Empathy is the softest form of power, and the most irresistible. But use it without purpose, and it will consume you, because the one who connects too deeply loses distinction between self and subject. And once you lose distinction, you lose dominance. So connect, but never commit. Listen, but never surrender. Guide, but never reveal your direction. Because in the theater of influence, empathy is your mask, and behind that mask, power smiles. Power does not always stand in the light. Often it hides in the shadows, quiet, patient, unseen. The greatest mistake of the ambitious is believing they must always be visible to be significant. But visibility breeds vulnerability. When people can see you, they can define you, attack you, limit you. Disappearance, on the other hand, is the ultimate defense, and the subtlest form of control. You were taught to show up, to be seen, to build presence. But constant presence breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds contempt. The moment you become predictable, you become replaceable. True power moves in cycles of presence and absence. Appear to command attention, disappear to amplify it. When you vanish, curiosity becomes your voice. People begin to speak your name even more loudly in your silence than they ever did in your company. Think of how the sun rules the world, not by constant exposure, but by rhythm. It rises, it withdraws, and in its absence, men still live by its memory. So too must you rule. Consider Talleyrand, the cunning diplomat who served under kings, emperors, and revolutions. He understood the art of vanishing better than any soldier ever understood war. When chaos erupted, he withdrew. When power shifted, he reappeared, calm, irreplaceable, indispensable. Because those who disappear wisely are never forgotten. They become necessary. Disappearance is not retreat, it is positioning. When you are not available, you force the world to calculate your value. Your silence becomes a negotiation tool. Ask yourself, when was the last time you made absence work for you? When was the last time you let mystery speak louder than words? You see, people are addicted to patterns. They crave predictability because it makes them feel safe. Once they can predict you, they stop respecting you. You become part of the furniture of their mind, familiar but powerless. Invisibility reawakens fear, and fear, when mixed with admiration, becomes authority. Psychologically, absence magnifies presence. It activates the brain's reward system. People remember you more intensely when they cannot reach you. This is why a lover becomes more desirable when distant, why a leader seems wiser when silent, and why those who constantly speak lose their influence faster than those who carefully withhold. To disappear effectively, you must understand timing. Withdraw too early, and you seem weak. Withdraw too late, and you appear desperate. Withdraw at the peak of your relevance, and your myth begins. Alexander the Great mastered this instinct before his fall. He would vanish from his troops for days, returning with renewed vision, new plans, and the aura of prophecy. His men believed he spoke to gods. In truth, he spoke only to silence, and silence made him divine. Modern leaders fail because they mistake exposure for power. They post, they announce, they explain. They build visibility but destroy mystique. Their every thought is documented, and thus their mystery evaporates. You must move differently. Speak rarely. Act strategically. Be seen only when it serves your plan. Let absence become your signature. Let the world wonder what you're building, who you're becoming, what you're plotting in silence. They will invent legends in the void you leave behind. Even in manipulation, disappearance is potent. When you withdraw attention, you create emotional scarcity. People chase what withdraws. They value what they cannot easily possess. Your silence becomes a psychological hook, one that pulls without motion. Every manipulator understands this distance multiplies desire, neglect amplifies need, and the less you explain yourself, the more power others assign to your motives. Invisibility is not the same as irrelevance. It is selective presence. You control when, where, and how you appear. You become an event, not a routine. Think of the master painter who leaves part of the canvas empty, forcing the viewer's mind to fill the space. Your absence does the same. It forces imagination to complete your story. And imagination, unlike truth, never fades. But to master disappearance, you must kill your need for validation. The weak crave acknowledgement, the strong command it through mystery. You must resist the urge to prove, explain, justify. Because the moment you explain your silence, it loses its power. Withdraw not from fear, but from design. Disappear not to escape, but to dominate unseen. When you control your visibility, you control perception. And perception, not truth, rules the world. So fade deliberately. Let silence become your language. Let absence sharpen your legend. And when you return like a storm, unexpected, undeniable, unstoppable. For those who master disappearance never truly leave. They simply become omnipresent, through memory, through mystery, through myth. Power, in its purest form, never announces itself. It hides beneath humility, obedience, and service. The crowd believes leadership is domination, commanding others, giving orders, demanding loyalty. But the true leader knows to dominate, you must first submit strategically. This is the paradox of power. Those who appear to serve often rule the deepest. Those who appear to obey quietly shape the world beneath the surface. You've been told that strength means control. That weakness means servitude. But what if submission, when done consciously, is the highest form of control? When you bow willingly, you disarm suspicion. When you appear harmless, others lower their guard. And when they lower their guard, you plant influence directly into their decision-making. Consider the court of Louis XIV, the Sun King of France. Every nobleman fought for attention, desperate to stand beside the throne. They thought they were competing for proximity to power. In truth, they were competing for distraction. Louis made himself the center of every desire, so that while they served him, he silently dictated their lives. He ruled not through command, but through the illusion of service. He served their vanity, and in return, they gave him their souls. Ask yourself, when you lead, do you command, or do you guide others to obey themselves into your plan? The master manipulator never imposes his will directly. He makes others believe the idea was theirs. He plants thoughts gently, nurtures them with flattery, and watches them grow into obedience. This is psychological judo, using the enemy's energy to execute your design. A direct push creates resistance. A subtle pull creates movement. When you serve the ego of others, they never realize they're carrying your agenda. History rewards those who mastered this paradox. Take Genghis Khan. He presented himself as the servant of divine will, a mere instrument of heaven's justice. His followers believed they fought for destiny. In truth, they fought for him. By appearing to serve something higher, he commanded men to die willingly in his name. Service creates trust, and trust is the currency of domination. Psychologically, humans are wired to lower their defenses around those who serve them. It activates their self-importance. They see you as loyal, dependable, safe. And safety is the perfect disguise for strategy. That's why the best manipulators never look like manipulators. They look like assistants, advisors, friends, lovers, disciples. They rise from beneath, not from above. Because power gained from the top is challenged, power grown from below is welcomed. Look at corporate leaders, politicians, even social influencers. The ones who dominate your attention aren't barking orders. They're serving you inspiration, helping you grow, listening to your struggles. You feel understood. You feel valued. And because you feel valued, you obey without resistance. This is the Machiavellian craft to disguise control as care, to appear devoted, yet secretly steer the emotional current of others. Servitude is camouflage, and the more convincing it looks, the more dangerous it becomes. Ask yourself, when was the last time someone helped you, only to later reveal the price? When was the last time a mentor, a boss, or a lover shaped your choices while insisting it was for your own good? You didn't notice at first because it didn't feel like control. It felt like love. It felt like leadership. That's how invisible power operates. It feels safe. True leadership, then, is not about commanding presence, but about invisible direction. You don't push people. You pivot their emotions until they walk themselves exactly where you want them to go. To do this, you must learn patience, to listen, to praise strategically, to agree publicly and contradict privately, to let others take the credit while you keep the outcome. The crowd wants recognition. Let them have it. The wise want results. Take them quietly. A king shouting his orders is insecure. A king who whispers and is still obeyed is immortal. The paradox of leadership is simple. When you appear to serve others, you enslave their need for validation. When you seem to obey, you define the framework of obedience itself. You must learn to shape authority without wearing its crown. To serve as shadow, to guide as mirror, to lead as echo. Because those who appear selfless can rule indefinitely, no rebellion can rise against someone who seems devoted to everyone else's good. Servitude, when conscious, is not submission. It is infiltration. And when done with precision, it transforms obedience into empire. So next time you are underestimated, smile. Serve them, praise them, mirror them. And while they celebrate your loyalty, tighten the invisible strings around their will. For the greatest leaders in history never looked like masters. They looked like servants who simply never stopped winning. Power does not roar. It whispers. It hides in kindness, in patience, in silence. The strongest control is the one that feels like freedom. To rule without resistance, you must become invisible within their trust. Let them believe they chose you. Let them defend your influence as if it were their own idea. Control, at its peak, is not domination. It is design. You build environments where obedience feels natural. You plant ideas that bloom in other minds, and they call them truth. Ask yourself, who truly holds power, the one who commands, or the one who shapes what others desire to obey? Remember this, the hand that moves unseen writes the fate of those who believe they are free. If you wish to master this art, to learn the hidden architecture of power and human nature, leave your thoughts below, subscribe for more Machiavellian lessons, and share this with those who still think control requires noise. Because the wise do not shout power, they become it.